Welcome to Digital Literacy, a guide to using technology and journalism. In this video, we're going to be looking at Adobe's InDesign CS6, which, as of the making of this video, is the latest version. We're going to start with a conceptual overview of the program, sort of how it works and some different concepts that are behind it. Then we're going to go ahead and create a new document in it. We're going to work with that document for a while, and then we'll go ahead and talk about how we save the documents and how we share those documents. So the first thing that you have to understand with InDesign is that it works in what's called a project nature. What that means is that InDesign will draw in resources from multiple places. In the InDesign file itself, which you'll find designated as a .indd file when you save these out at the end, that will contain sort of directions. It'll include any text that you bring in, but it won't embed any images or graphics or anything like that. Those are stored elsewhere and linked to them, and that's an important concept to get down. It means that the saving process is not quite as simple as it would be with, say, a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. There's a couple of extra steps that you need to go through if you want to be moving that InDesign document around. The second thing that you need to understand about it is that it works with what we call containers and objects. So once we start placing containers, boxes that contain objects, the way we handle those is a little bit different than the way you would work in a standard word processor. So let's go ahead and start with creating a document. So here we are in InDesign. We'll go ahead and click on New Document. And I'm going to leave all of this in its default right now, but I want to show you a couple of things that are here. InDesign allows you to create multiple page documents. And so right now we're going to start with one page, and we're going to start obviously on page 1. You can set it up so that it will do facing pages, so that the first page would be a right-hand side page, and then the second and third would be a left and a right. Or you can set it up so that it just does individual pages, depending upon what sort of a document you're working on would determine that. Below that, you've got your page sizes, so you can do legal, letter, tabloids. You can also go in and do all sorts of custom sizes and things like that as well. Below that, those are your dimensions, and it does everything in picas here. That's the default mode. You can set up your orientation to be either a normal 8.5 by 11 or a landscape format there. And then down below you've got options for columns and gutters, and that's where it starts to get a little strange. We're going to leave this at one column and a one pica gutter for now, and we're going to change that later on. You've also got margins down here, and margins are important to be thinking about because you can't print on most printers all the way to the edge of the paper. There's a little link button here in the middle, and that's important to recognize, because what that means is if I go in here and I change one of these, you'll see that it cascades and it changes all of them. Whereas if I uncheck that, this will allow you to have different margins on different sides of the page. So we're going to leave that at 3 picas for now. So we're going to go ahead and click OK, and this will create our document. So right now this looks like a fairly standard word processor, but most good design is based on a grid of some sort. So we want to go ahead and we want to decide on a grid. So we're going to go to Margins and Columns. And this brings up what we saw at the beginning. So this is just a second way that you can go ahead and adjust this. And for this, I'm going to say let's start with a 7-column grid, and we'll bump this gutter down. This gutter is also sometimes called an interstitial, to about half a pica. So we're going to put that down at 6 there. And I'm going to leave all of the margins the same. And what you can see now is that it's drawn this purple grid in the background here. And this is going to help us with alignment. Once again, good design is based on good grids. And you can go in and you can change this at any point in time. So what we have around the edges, again, these are our margins, and then we have columns, and then in between those we have gutters. Now there's one other thing that you'll sometimes see pop up here, and they're called guides. And a guide is something that's sort of a temporary alignment tool. And the way you get a guide is you would go up into where you have your rulers across the top here, and if you just click and drag, you'll see that you get a blue line that comes down, and you can bring them over from the side as well. So these are temporary. The grids in the back, those columns and these blue lines that we're drawing here, you won't see those in your final project, and you can go into view and you can turn these things off from time to time if you want to be able to just see what's going on there. We may play around with the guides a little bit in the second video here, but I just wanted you to see where those were. To get rid of them, just click on them and drag them back up, and you can put as many guides on there as you want, depending upon what it is that you're going to be working on. So I've got a document here. It's called Untitled-1, and there's a little asterisk next to it. That asterisk is an indication that you have unsaved changes because we haven't actually saved this. So I'm going to go under File, and I'm going to do a Save As here. And I'm just going to give this today's date, which is the last day of July. I'm going to call it demo. That's the date code that we've used in other videos if you want to go and look at that, and just whatever your project name is here. Now, where do you save this? A lot of folks are just going to dump this onto their desktop, and that poses some problems, particularly if you're working in a lab and you're going to be wanting to take things with you. So I've already created a folder on my desktop called InDesign files because I've got some elements here that I'm going to use a little bit later on. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop that into that folder. And so now you can see the asterisk has gone away and it has changed this, and there's that extension, that INDD file. So we've got that saved. So let's talk about sort of the basic tools and the layout here. Up across the top, you've got all of your standard menus under File. You've got your savings, you've got your imports and some things like that, some presets. Down towards the bottom, there's a package and print. We'll talk about those a little bit later on. Most of your editing controls are in here. Layout, this is going to control the way that things are structured on your page. You've got a whole lot of stuff here for typography. Object, we're going to come into here a couple of times. There's a couple of things that are important in here, like fittings, things like that. You can create some tables in your documents if you need them. View is just where you're going to be able to change the way you see different things here. So if you wanted to, you can come down here and you can hide the rulers, and that gives you a little more screen space, although most folks like to show the rulers. You can come down here to grids and guides, and you can turn those on and off so that you can see them and not see them. We're just going to leave all of that stuff on. And then window is sort of strange. Window is these things that are over here on the right hand side. Let's click away from that. So right now I have the windows for character, paragraph, pages, layers, and links in my first grouping here, and then stroke and color, and then swatches. And if I wanted to, I can grab these and I can move them around, because swatches really belongs up here with color. And then I have character styles, object styles, and paragraph styles. And this whole group, I think, actually belongs up here because it sort of works together with all of this. This is all sort of type handling and things like that. And then text wrap, I might go ahead and dump that up here because it sort of fits. Paragraph styles goes up here. And again, you can get to all of these in here. So you can just go ahead, turn these things on, and if you bring up, say, links, it'll pop it out like that. And this little double arrow that you're seeing up here, click that and it goes back into that. So this is just a quick place that you can put some of these different windows that you're going to use to make different adjustments. Over on the left hand side of the screen, you're going to see that these are a bunch of tools, and today there's just 3 of them that we're going to be taking a quick look at. The first one is this black arrow up here, and this is a selection tool, and this tool is going to allow you to work with objects, with those containers that we talked about a little bit earlier. The white arrow in a lot of situations is going to function exactly the same as the black arrow, except when it gives you the ability to work with the content that's inside of a container, so the actual objects. Usually you would use that if you have images or graphics or something like that and you want to slide them around a little bit within a frame. And then the last one that we're going to work with today is the text tool. Now, the way this is going to work is a little strange for you. You don't just click in here and start typing, although you could try that, and you can see that all it's doing is highlighting various tools around here, because those are all set up on quick keys. If you hover over any of these tools, you'll see, for instance, I've hovered over the type tool, and so you're seeing type tool. It just disappeared on me, and then in parentheses T. That just means that hitting the T key when you're not in a text box will allow you to select these. The direct selection tool is A, the selection tool is V, so that's just a quick way. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually draw a box, and so I'm going to draw a box that looks kind of like this, just a little 3-column across box, and I have the snap to guides turned on. That's one of the things that's over there in view under grids and guides, snap to guides. And what that'll do is if there's a guide or a column marker, it'll snap to that. You can turn that off pretty easily, either come down here through the menu, or you can see that there's a keystroke for it, a shift command semicolon, and that will turn them on and off. We're going to leave them on for today. So now I've got my text tool here, and I'm going to hop back out, go to my InDesign files, because I have a little document that I wrote up here. I should have loaded this beforehand, but we'll give it a moment to come up in Pages, and we're going to use this as our text. So you always want to make sure that you've got access to your text. So I'm just going to do a select all, and I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to tab back over to InDesign, and I'm still in my text box. I've got a little blinking cursor, and I'm just going to paste it. So I'm going to hit Command V, and there's my text. Now, this top line up here, this is actually a headline for this. So I'm going to handle that a little differently. So I'm going to hit Command X to delete it. I'm going to come down here to the beginning and just bring that back up. Now, if you look at the text that I have, you can see that this is fairly lengthy, and this is not a really big box. If you look closely, and I'll zoom in here, I should give you the zoom tips here. Similar to Photoshop and some other InDesign programs, Command plus will zoom in for you, and Command minus will zoom back out. You can also hit Command 0 to get back to a full screen mode, and of course, as soon as I do that, I need to come back in here. But down here at the bottom, a little difficult to see here, so I am going to grab that and move this. There it is. That little red plus sign, let me zoom in on this even more, at the lower right-hand corner of this box is telling us that we actually have more text than is being displayed. And that's important to know, because what that means is we can take this, and in the next demo we're going to show you how to link this to other boxes. So if you're creating a multi-page document, a newspaper or magazine, and you've got a jump, you can put all of the text in one box, and then you can link it to another box someplace else a little bit later on. So we can see the rest of the text. I can come in here in the object or the black arrow here, and I can grab this, and you can see I can pop this out. And does that take care of all of it? No, it doesn't. Bring it over, still have more text. I wrote an awful lot on this, so we're probably, there we go. Now we've got all of it there. But I only want that 3 columns, so I'm going to pop this back over here to that 3-column view. And I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit, because what I want to do is I want to show you how we adjust type. Now what we're going to do today is we're just going to go in and we're just going to do individual characters and some paragraph formatting. In the second part of this video, we're going to talk about how to set up styles, those character styles and paragraph styles that are over here, and that's a pretty powerful thing. So we'll work on that a little bit later on. So we can go in here, we can go ahead and click on the text tool, and I can select all of this text here, and then I can hit character over here, and this is going to pop out this little window. Now there's 2 ways that you can do this. You can do this through the windows here, or you can see that you've got the option of adjusting all of this stuff up here at the top. This is sort of new to me. I'm still used to working on one of the older versions of InDesign, but you can do it either way. This is giving you all of the exact same things that are across the top. So tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and close that, and I'm going to force myself to use the new version here. So we can go ahead and choose a different typeface. So we can just come down here, and let's pick up something like, say, not Century Gothic, that's pretty well used. Let's pick up something like an Garamond. So we're going to pick up Adobe Garamond Pro Regular, and so that's gone ahead and changed the typeface all the way through. Now you've got 4 different built-in versions of this. So you've got the regular, you've got italic, bold, and bold italic. We're just going to go ahead and leave it there. You've also got your point sizes here, so you can come in here and we can bump this up a little bit, and that's going to make it bigger, or we can bump it down a little bit. Now in your design classes, you're going to talk about 2 other ways of dealing with text, and those are what are called leading and kerning. So let's start with leading. Leading is sort of a funny phrase, and it actually goes back to the old days when type was hand set, and to separate out different rows of text, they would put a strip of lead in between them to space them out. The tool right below the point size one here, this is your leading, and if you mouse over that, it'll pop up leading. And when it's in parentheses, that's telling you that that's the automatic leading. So for a 12-point typeface, it sets the leading, the space between the bottom of one row to the top of the next, the bottom of one row to the bottom of the text above it at 14.4 points. But you can go in here and you can say, you know, I want to air this out a little bit. I'm going to try it at 18 points. And so now you can see that this is spacing this out more that way. All right, so let's go ahead and we can do that. Now, the other tool that's just to the right of that one is something that's called tracking. And tracking will adjust the space in between every single letter. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take, say, the first line here, and the tracking right now is set at 0, so that's normal. We can go ahead and we can bump this up to, say, 10. And what that's doing is that's increasing it. And we can go ahead and bring it down some too to tighten up text. But that's doing it for every single character that's in there. And sometimes you want to do that, and sometimes you don't want to do that. But I'm going to zoom in some more here so that we can see Let's come down a little bit, because I want to go over to that word video. And when we look at video, you can see that the space between the V and the I is pretty extensive. So I could select the whole word and I could bring this down, and that helps a little bit, but now the E and the O over here, they're getting a little bit tight. So I'm going to bring this back up to 0, because from I to D, D to E, E to O, they all look pretty good. It's the space between V and I that I'm a little concerned about. So I have placed the cursor just between those two. And I'm going to go to this one up here, and this is what's called kerning. And now what I can do is I can come in and I can adjust the space between those individual letter forms. And we can tighten that up. I might even come over here and tighten up between I and D a bit, and maybe a little bit between D and O. And that there tightens up that space. Now, we're doing this in what's called body copy. You would almost never go in and kern individual letters in body copy. However, for a headline, you would absolutely go ahead and do that so that it flows better, so that it tightens up that space, or maybe airs the space out a little bit so that it's easier to read. Remember, when you're dealing with typography, one of the primary things that you're looking for is a high level of readability that's in here. So that's some of the basic text tools that you've got in there. I'm just going to hit Command 0 and come back out for this. Remember, I said we were going to do something a little bit different with that headline there. I've selected the box, so I've used the black arrow key here, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to drag this down a bit, and then I'm going to go create another text box up here. I'm going to make it a pretty big one, and I still have that text in my saved in the computer there. So I'm just going to hit Command V, and now we'll zoom in a little bit on Al's 10 commandments for shooting video. And that's kind of a long headline. It's not necessarily the greatest headline, but let's go ahead and do something different with this. So let's go ahead and change the typeface on it. And this time, let's go ahead and bring out the character window over here, just so that you can see that it works exactly the same. So let's pick up a nice sans serif fonts. I am a big fan of Helvetica, and let's go ahead and use condensed black there. Let's go ahead and bring the point size up to, let's see, 30 isn't going to do it because I can't get it all in there on 2 lines. Boy, that's not great there, is it? Because I've got a hyphenated word there, so 24 isn't going to work. How about if I just go in there and I type in 20? Well, that's getting a little bit better, but maybe 22? Okay. So we've got a little bit of space out here that I'm not always crazy about. And that spacing between those 2 lines there, this is a little big for me. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of this. And remember that what we can adjust here is the leading. So I'm going to drop that leading down, and I'm going to tighten this up. All right. And then I'm going to come back over here, grab my black arrow, tighten up that box, click and grab this one and drag this up here. All right, so that's the basics of how we're going to deal with some character sorts of things. What I'd like to do next is let's add some photos to this page. And so I'm going to come over here, and there's a couple of boxes. There's one here that's going to create an actual rectangle that you could use for backdrops or something like that. But the one above it is a rectangle frame tool. And so I could use this tool, and I could come in here and I could draw a box. And now this is a container, and it's waiting for an object. So if I hit Command D, it's going to let me go grab an object. And so I am going to go ahead and grab, let's grab this picture from the Grand Canyon here. Now, that picture was larger than the box that I drew. So if I come down here and I grab the corner here, you can see that it'll keep filling up that box. And I could sit here and sort of wrangle this around a little bit, wait until I can see the whites at the edges. Okay, so I've got the edge there, but there's a simpler way of doing this. If I go up under Object and go to Fitting, what I can do is I can fit the frame to the content. Now, you don't want to use Fit Content to Frame, because what that's going to do is that's going to squish your image, but fit the frame to the content. And now what it's done is it's gone ahead and filled that entire box, but the box is way too large at this point in time. So what I want to do is I want to shrink this down. Now, if I just grab a corner here, what's going to happen is it's going to start cropping stuff out of that, and I don't want to do that, so I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Command key and the Shift key, and now as I grab a corner here, it's going to scale this proportionally. All right, so now you can see that this image is getting to a point where it's more of a usable size. So let's say that I want this in here and I want it to run across 3 columns like that. Now the problem I have is this image is sitting on top of the text. So there's a couple of things that I could do here. I could go and where did they hide it in this version? I can go to Arrange under Object, and I can send it backwards. And what that'll do, if I do this a couple of times, or I could just send it to the back, now my text is sitting on top of it. But that's not really ideal. What I would love to do is just have the text wrap around this. And I can do that. If I come down to Text Wrap with that object selected, I can come in here and I've got a couple of options. I've got No Text Wrap, which will just have it seated there. I'm going to zoom in so you can watch what happens here. Or I can go to this next one, that's Wrap Around the Bounding Box, which is that container. If I click that, you can see that it just moved all of that text away. And that's going to make your life a whole lot easier. You can also split it so that it sits in between if you wanted to. Come back over here, and whenever we adjust this, you'll see it's going ahead and is moving that text around. Now, this is a situation where I might want to use a guide, because what I'd love to do is get, say, the top of my box lined up with the top of this line of text. So I can go ahead and I can grab a guide, just click and drag it down out of there, and I'm going to bring it down. Well, maybe I want to line it up with the bottom of the text. So there's the bottom of the text, and now I can just slide this down, pop it into place. Probably needs to come down just a touch more. There we go. And now I can go ahead and I can grab that guide and get rid of it and scale it away. And now I've got this lined up. So if you're looking at that grid that we talked about before, where you want everything to have nice alignment on the grid, that's how you can use those guides there. So we've done just a little bit of work here. We've talked a little bit about characters. Let's talk about the paragraph style. I know we're hopping around a little bit here. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select this entire paragraph, and you can see that that box, that container is selected there. And under the paragraph tools, what I can do is a couple of different things. One, I can go ahead and I can change my alignment. Please don't almost never center your text. Right justify is something that you might want to use. Left justify is the default there. And there's a couple of different fully justifies here. And the first one here is the one that you're going to want to use the most, because what that's going to do is it's going to take every line of text and it's going to align it except for the last one, so that you've got sort of that natural space there. If you fully justify all lines, it starts to look a little weird, because now everything is sort of ending, and you're either an amazing typist and got your character counts just perfect, or you did something kind of weird. So as a general rule of thumb, you're either going to want to use left justify or justify the left line, justify left and right except for the last line. So that's there. You can do some indentations here as well. So you can go ahead and you can say we're going to move everything in a little bit from the left. I'm not sure why you'd do that in this situation. There are some other situations that you'd want to do it. There's also these tools down here where you can put spaces before, you can put space in there for a drop cap, and then this one here is going to be your first line left indent. And this you can use to go ahead and just add, say, a 1 pica, oops, hop there, indent on all of your text. And it's doing it to everything that we've got selected. Now, we selected the entire box, so it applied to everything. You could also go in there and, using the text tool, you could just select, say, that first paragraph and say on that one, don't actually want anything in there. So just put a 0 and it takes it out. All right. You can also do a negative indent, but then you've got some problems where it's not going to let you do that unless we come in here and let's say, let's move everything in 1, and then we'll take that first line backwards by 1. And now you can see what we've done is, instead of an indent, we've got I don't know, an extent, an opposite indent, whatever you want to call it there. So, all right, so we've gone through some text tools, some image tools, different kinds of things like that. Let's talk about saving, exporting, and something called packaging. So as I'm looking up here, what I'm seeing is I've got that asterisk, which means that it hasn't been saved. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit Command S to save it. Now, what I've done is I've got, as long as I stay on this machine, I've got everything I need so that I can come back later on and I can open this up. But if I decided that I wanted to go to a different machine, I could do a couple of different things. One, I could hope that it's got the same typefaces and it's got the same images, because remember, this image here is just a link to the image that's sitting in a folder someplace else. So the options that I have down here, I could do the save, which I did, and hope that I've got everything. I could also go ahead and do an export, and this would allow me to export the whole thing as, say, a PDF. But that's going to lock everything down. Maybe that's where you're going to be when you're completely done and you want to have something permanent, but we still want to be able to edit this. So InDesign has something called a package. And what a package does, it's going to go ahead and pull together your InDesign file, that .indd file. It's also going to pull together any typefaces, any fonts that you've used, any images or graphics that you've used, and it's going to put all of it in one place. So I brought up package here, and we start with a summary, and then it's got the fonts that we've used, that Garamond Pro and Helvetica New Condensed Black. It's got links for these images that it's going to pull together, any swatches that we may have done, and we're going to talk about color in the next video, any print settings that we may have put in there, any external plugins, and now it's going to let us go ahead and package this. Now you can go ahead and put a bunch of information in here for how to contact you. That's a good thing to have. And I've got this ready to go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder on my desktop, and this is going to be demo packaged, and then create that, and then into that folder I'm going to save this package. And again, it's copying the fonts, it's copying linked graphics, it's going to update any graphic links in there. The rest of these we're not going to use a whole lot, so I'm going to leave those unchecked. That's the default settings on this, and I'm going to click package. It's going to give you a warning here telling you that typefaces fonts are copyrighted, so you have to be very, very careful about the typefaces that you're using. So that's why you're going to get that warning message. I'm going to click OK. And if I come to the desktop here and I open up my demo package, create another folder in there, it's got all of the pieces that we need. And so now I could take this, put it on a thumb drive, zip it and email it to somebody, and someone else could go ahead and open the document with the text, with the typefaces that I wanted used, as well as the images and all of those things. So that's your first introduction here to InDesign. The vocabulary that you should have pulled out of this, let's talk about that. Project. Remember that the InDesign file, that .indd file, is not actually a final printable usable thing. What it is it's a container that's got all of these different things. We talked about margins, that's the spaces around the edge, and you have to watch out for how close to the edge your printer can get. Some printers can go all the way, a full bleed. Some need a little bit of space there just for paper handling and things like that. We talked about columns, which we have here. We set this up on a 7-column grid. We talked about the gutter, which is the space between the columns. Some people will refer to that as an interstitial. I always love saying that word. We talked about guides. Guides are these temporary things that you can pull down so that you can use those for alignment. We talked about saving your files. We talked about exporting your files as PDFs very, very quickly. And then most importantly, packaging your files. Particularly if you're doing work in a lab, you're going to want to package that when you're done, because the next day when you come back in, the next time that you come back in, you may not be working on the same machine. And if you're not, then you're going to have to go chase around, because when you open up your file, all of your links are going to be broken. So you're going to see here in the center where we've got this nice little link. If I were to go ahead and say take that file, which I think was this one, and I'm going to get rid of it. In a few seconds here, it's going to give me a question mark because it doesn't know where that is anymore. And if I try and print this, all it has is a very, very low resolution version of this. So I'm going to come back out here, and I'm going to undo that, put it back, and then that question mark goes back to a linked file there. So packaging is incredibly important when you're working in labs. It'll allow you to take this from, say, your home machine if you have CS6 to a lab, and then to a different lab and move it around, or to share it with classmates on projects. So that's going to wrap up this video on InDesign CS6. This is the first of two. And the next one, we're going to talk a little bit more about text formatting. We're going to talk about some paragraph formatting things and how you can take all of those things that we did individually and we can create styles so that you can go ahead and apply the same formatting to lots and lots of different things. We're also going to talk about color and swatches, which is fairly important. We talked a little bit about text wrap. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And we'll talk about working in layers because that's another thing that's really, really powerful and will give you a high level of control. So start playing around with this. You've probably got an assignment that's coming in from one of your professors to start working on this. Good luck with that. This series was produced for the Journalism Department of the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Georgia by a grant from the James M. Cox Institute for Newspaper Management Studies.